Reverend Father Michael J. McGivney, pastor of souls, father to Catholic Irish immigrants, founder of the Knights of Columbus, and pioneer of social justice in the 1800s. Father Michael J. McGivney came on the scene in America, in American Christianity, at a time when Catholicism was being questioned as to its validity in American Christian heritage. Father Michael J. McGivney was born on August 12, 1852. He was the eldest of 13 children, 6 of whom lived to maturation. Reverend McGivney was a young child who was an immigrant. He understood the plight of those that came to this country to find a better way, a better life. For many Irish Catholics, settling on the eastern seaboard in New Haven, Connecticut, was a sensible thing to do, given some of the difficulties they had endured. McGivney, as a child, lost his father very, very young, and he and his family had to endure much to survive, to persevere in the difficult circumstances. Like many of his day, when the father died at a very young age, the children and the mother were left to not only fend for themselves, but to create a future for themselves. When McGivney was young, in his teenage years, he had thought about becoming a priest, a Catholic priest. And when his father died, this dream almost dissipated. It was almost taken away from him. But under a great, great mother that he had and some great pastors, McGivney continued to follow his dreams. He ended up going to college at St. Hyacinthe in Canada, and then followed on to seminary at Mount St. Joseph Seminary in Baltimore, Maryland. He was ordained a priest at Mount St. Mary's on December 22nd, 1877, by Bishop Gibbons. Bishop Gibbons appointed him as curate of St. Mary's Church in New Haven, Connecticut, shortly thereafter. When McGivney first arrived in his role as curate of the parish, one of his main roles early on was to provide for the spiritual and social needs of many of the parishioners therein. And one of the early findings, according to the research conducted, was that many of the situations which plagued the parish were due to the fact that many of the families were very, very poor. These were poor Catholic Irish immigrants. And just like McGivney's own family and the problems that plagued his own family, such as the loss of the income of the breadwinner in the family, McGivney started to see this reality not from his own personal experience only, but also from those that he pastored. James Lynch writes to James Hughes in a letter about McGivney's family himself in 1876 that McGivney's family faced a very terrible crisis following the death of his father, such as the need to work in factories under undue and difficult circumstances, but that Mrs. McGivney, Michael's mother, was an industrious worker doing whatever was necessary for her 6 children. But when McGivney came on the scene in New Haven, he quickly realized that not every single family was afforded the same opportunity he was in his own. Shortly thereafter, after seeing this problem, McGivney started to consider what could be done to alleviate some of the problems that were heard about and what were experienced by the men. Not only were the financial concerns and considerations a problem for him, but one of the interesting things that McGivney found in his role was that many of the men were joining organizations, social organizations, in order to fit in with the social norms of society in order to be accepted, whether that was to get a job or whether that was to advance one's own career, whether that was to form social contacts. Sheridan Council number 24, in a short sketch of the founder of the order, the 20th anniversary of 1905, talks about how at St. Mary's, Father McGivney began to envision a society much like the organizations that many men were socially attracted to, like the Freemasons, like the Foresters, many of these different organizations, some which were acceptable to the Catholic hierarchy and some which were not, such as the Masons, for example. And at St. Mary's, as this report goes from Sheridan Council, Father McGivney conceived this idea of a great Catholic society, a social society in which men could join while they could receive these social acceptances, but yet they would not be required to sacrifice their faith to join a secret society that may have been considered antagonistic to religion, and one in which ecclesiastical authority could be obtained. So this continued, this idea, this vision, this zeal continued, and not only was this the issue, but there are two main issues were considered by McGivney. One being that he wanted to form a society where men could join together, where they could have a good religious formation, but also that they could provide for the necessities of the women and the children when the man, the breadwinner, would die in the family, to provide some kind of insurance benefits for that family, to continue in their process of not only grieving but also living. So this continues to progress over time. One of the most important things that McGivney did is, and this is cited by Arthur J. Riley in With Vision, Zeal, and Charity, the 100th anniversary of the birth of the founder of the order, written in 1952, that McGivney's thoughts entirely were focused on founding of the Knights of Columbus, this organization which would form from his ideas to provide financial assistance to families when the breadwinner died, and to provide an alternative to the forbidden fraternal societies that men were joining. And McGivney continues to pursue this, and in 1882, the Connecticut Catholic, on February 11th, stated that the realization of this organization, after much consideration, was formed with 60 men joining the organization, which was limited only to men to form them, to provide life insurance to widows and orphans. And it was modeled after the Massachusetts Catholic Order of Foresters. And it was interesting to note that the Foresters even state that the way the Knights of Columbus were formed would one day rival the Foresters itself. Interesting to note, given some of the background we have today. Well, McGivney founded the organization, and in its founding is character as a priest, as a pastor of souls, as a pastor of immigrants, comes forth very, very clearly in this. Interesting to note, Father Joseph Gordian Daly, one of his close contemporaries, wrote in 1900 in the Columbiad, which was the organization's mailing, their magazine. He was a contemporary of McGivney, ordained in 1891, and he said that McGivney had a special vocation to, quote, develop Catholic manhood, to bind into one conspicuous solidarity all the elements that make for strength of character, and so indeed to bring out that solidity of character, in other words, that Catholicity, prominently in its strength before the world, close quote. And Daly goes on to say that the founding of the Knights of Columbus was McGivney's sacerdotal work, and that it was McGivney who understood the world and the challenges of many of these people. And he stated that when McGivney died in 1890, he was a pastor of Thomaston's church in Thomaston, Connecticut. He said, quote, he left no debts, yet owned not a dollar. And the reason of it was that in his heart of charity, he had given his last dollar away. McGivney's character is amazing in what he did and how he progressed and how he cared for souls that were entrusted to him. One of the interesting things that is known about McGivney's character, and when he wrote a letter of recommendation for this young man to become a priest, he recommended Timothy Crawley to the cemetery on August 10th, 1881. He had known Crawley for 4 years, and it just shows that the men were gradually, even as little as they might have been in contact with McGivney, he had an immense impact on them because they flocked to him. Further information that gives us this understanding is that when McGivney did die, he had an incredible funeral. In fact, there was a testimonial on his death come from the Knights of Columbus Board of Directors after he died, stating that McGivney himself breathed into the Knights of Columbus its life, cherished its infancy, he guided its childhood, counseled its youth, and rejoiced in its strength and prosperity, and had responded to the summons of his heavenly Father. They stated that McGivney was their father, and they will ever miss him as a child mourns his parents. And the obituary of Father McGivney, printed in the New Britain Herald on August 14, 1890, states that McGivney was widely known throughout the states for his work on the Knights of Columbus, and they stated that the Knights of Columbus was successful because his untiring efforts were on its behalf, and that every single parish and parishioner he served knew and loved him, both at St. Mary's Church, St. Thomas's in Thomaston, and the Immaculate Conception Parish in Terryville, Connecticut as well. The New Britain Herald on August 18th of 1890, talking about the funeral services, states that the body of McGivney was viewed by hundreds the day before, that floral arrangements themselves were the grandest ever and came from all parts of the state. The services were held at 10:30 a.m. in the morning, and the church could not, quote, hold half the people, close quote. The Knights of Columbus themselves provided a funeral entourage of over 150 members, and the remains were interred at St. Joseph's Cemetery in Waterbury, Connecticut. Interesting to this, to show the connection, David Q. Liptak, writing in Pioneer Priest of Early Connecticut, Reverend Michael J. McGivney, the heroic founder of the Knights of Columbus, states that McGivney was quiet, reserved, a hard-working person who deeply cared for others and would gladly retreat to the shadows than remain in the limelight. He had a care of the immigrants coming to the United States, and he understood the value in bonding brothers together for support. He was a man of great zeal, but also a man of obedience to superiors. He was active in prison ministry, and he left a legacy of over 9,000 councils of the Knights of Columbus in over 12 countries. His perseverance, his love for souls, it goes ever into the history books. Not only that, but his impact can be felt even today, not only with those 9,000 councils in 12 countries, but McGivney was a man who was surrounded by many, many people. He gave of himself. He formed this organization, which would become a charitable organization throughout the world. He, at his funeral, again, having this great society, some would even say that he was too modest. But he was a man of the people. He always wanted the betterment of the soul's condition, according to Thomas Kaufman, and that he was weaving the outcasts, meaning the Catholics in Connecticut, into the norm of society. He espoused the Christian virtues always, passing them on to the members, who then would permeate the society with them. The Knights of Columbus as an organization pities human suffering, ties men together with charity and goodwill, and develops in men a civilized feeling and kindlier emotions of the heart, according to Thomas H. Cummins in Gentleman and Fraternity, writing in Donohue's magazine in 1895. The Knights of Columbus now today is a worldwide organization founded by a man of simple charity. Today, We are told that the Pope of the Catholic Church commends the Knights of Columbus's refugee work and with missionary spirit. Quoting in Insurance Weekly News of August 19, 2016, we are told that the Knights began a new initiative called Building the Domestic Church while strengthening our parish, which seeks to help the Knights of Columbus and their families worldwide unite their prayer and charitable efforts by uniting with the struggles of Christians in the Middle East. The article goes on to say that the worldwide impact the Knights of Columbus have made from the simple beginnings in 1882 when the Knights of Columbus was founded to such a reputable and recognizable organization in 2017 is due entirely to the foresight of Reverend Father Michael J. McGivney and the strong leadership of the Knights of Columbus throughout the years that has allowed the Knights to make a worldwide impact. Today, Father Michael J. McGivney is on the road to sainthood within the Catholic Church. He was declared venerable just a few years ago. His body was dug up from Waterbury, placed in what is called a sarcophagus, and now is waiting in St. Mary's Church in New Haven, Connecticut, run by the Dominicans in New Haven, for the next step, which will be sainthood. Another 1 or 2 miracles will declare him a saint within the Catholic Church. Many Catholics await this day and this opportunity to declare him a saint. A man who was very insightful, understood the needs of the widows and the children of those coming to America, pastored good souls, provided spiritual recourse to men in the area, provided a social avenue for them to understand their role in society as both religious and as civilian cooperators in American Christian society, and an organization that now today ranks as one of the top charitable giving organizations in the world, with its headquarters in New Haven, where much of the research was done in New Haven, Connecticut at the Knights of Columbus Archive Museums. A wonderful opportunity for anybody to cherish. And in closing, Father Michael J. McGivney, as a pastor of souls, he was a founder of the Knights of Columbus, and he championed the charitable works of an organization that is now worldwide in almost every country of the world, making a difference to save souls. It is impressive to see that one man in American Christian heritage in our country made a difference that lasted throughout the years, throughout generations, and many more to come. Thank you.